This is Chapter 3 in a series of media resources accompanying the Starting Point Conversation Guide. Soundtrack is a message series delivered at North Point Community Church by Louis Giglio. Great stories have equally moving soundtracks, and there is no greater epic than the unfolding and unending story of God. In this message, Louis explains that the glory of creation invites us to join the story.
Well, as we begin this series, Soundtrack, we're going to be talking about the greatest story ever told and how we can join in the anthem of the soundtrack that amplifies the story. Before you have a song, you have a story, and once you see the story, the song unfolds. I had a privilege a few months ago, actually at the beginning of this year, of being in Abbey Road Studios in London. Anybody, does that ring a bell for anybody here? Any music people here? Abbey Road, the Beatles, you with me? I wasn't there as a tourist. I was there actually working on a record, which was pretty exciting. Our label was working on a Matt Redman record there, and it's pretty amazing. There are 3 studios inside Abbey Road for recording music. And there's the smaller one, which we were in, thank you very much, because we were just mixing the record, called Studio 3. Down the hall is Studio 2. It's a little bit larger 2-story deal at the end of the hall. Some guy named Paul McCartney was in there actually tracking a record. I saw him in the hallway, like from me to you, talking to George Martin out in the hallway, okay? Younger people don't care. Older people's like, whoa, okay, good spot. That was a nice one, way to go. George Martin just happened to discover and produce all the Beatles records, by the way. Studio 1, downstairs, down the hall the other way and kind of underneath where we were, is a massive studio. It's where the Beatles recorded most of their songs. And I'm not kidding you when I tell you it's almost as big as this room. And in Studio 1, so we've got Matt Redman worship project going on in Studio 3. Did I mention that? We have Paul McCartney, some people have heard of him, down in Studio 2. In Studio 1, they're scoring the soundtrack for the movie Troy. Yeah, there you go. So one person saw the movie Troy. She's like, oh, wow, okay, that's cool. Brad Pitt, you remember it? I don't know if you saw much beyond that, but he was in it. And when I'm talking about scoring, I mean like big time. Okay, I want to get in there bad, but it's locked up top secret because the movie's not coming out for 6 more months and nobody can see it because they're afraid I'd go to the tabloids and tell them how the movie ends, because nobody knows how the story ends, and it's a big deal. So you can't go in there, but you can hear. They have a restaurant at the bottom of this. Abbey Road's a humongous complex, and on the bottom they have a little restaurant, little cafe thing, and right down the hall from there are the big doors that go into Studio 1, and I just kind of walk by there and sort of lean up real close to the doors, and they're soundproof, but they have a 110-piece London Philharmonic Orchestra in there scoring this movie. You can't keep that soundproofed. I mean, it's massive, and you can hear it, and I'm like, I hear it. I hear something. I don't know what's going on, but I hear the music, I'm outside the door, and finally, I've been there about 3 days now, and finally feel like we're building good relationships with the people. And the studio manager, I say to her, we have this record label, and we do recordings throughout the years, and one of our other groups might like to come back and record here at some time, and so I feel like I'd be helpful for me to see all the studios that you have here, and she went for that. She said, well, that's fine. I can't actually take you in there until they're finished with their session. So maybe later tonight when they wrap things up for the day, I'll take you in. I'm like, that's fine with me. So in we go later that day. And it's just unbelievable. The doors open, and there's a setup for an orchestra to be recorded. And on the end of this huge studio, it's ceiling almost as high as the one in here, all the way across the wall, as big as that wall, is a screen, and they're shooting from a projector at this end the movie Troy, and it's playing right as we walk in because they're doing some post-editing, and the control room guys are still working, and we're walking in, and I'm supposed to be looking at the microphones they have and all the great stuff, and then I'm looking at the movie. I'm like, I want to see what's going on in the movie, so I'm like, I'm looking back to see if, anything weird happens that I don't know about, and I could tell people ahead of time, hey, I've already seen the movie, let me tell you what's going to happen. And it was amazing, though, because did you see the movie Troy? Anybody here? Apparently not. Wasn't a big success here. Thank you very much. You saw the movie. Powerful movie, I'm guessing, but it wasn't all that powerful this day because you couldn't hear the music playing. It was just the projector shooting it on the wall, and the guys in the control room down here probably could hear the music in the control room. And as we walked around, I thought, that's amazing. 110-piece orchestra. And you know how they did it? She was telling us how they did it. The composer stands there and watches the movie. And as the movie unfolds, the scoring happens. Literally watching the movie. The score comes together. And it's the score, is it not, that causes us to rise up on the inside and go, yeah, or oh no, or uh-oh, or ooh. It's the soundtrack that brings the story to life. For these weeks, we want to talk about that soundtrack. Soundtrack for us is going to be the worship of the people of God. Because the story that we're talking about is the story of God. Before you can have a song, you have to have a story. Before there can be a score, there has to be a drama unfolding. And the drama that's unfolding around us every day is the story of God. It's the greatest story ever told. And as we see it unfold, as we watch what he does, as we understand who he is, a song emerges in our hearts. It emerges in the hearts of the people of God. And we become, you and I together become the soundtrack of God in our world. And that's why the songs we sing here on Sunday morning, they take on such huge significance. And the worship of our lives, collectively and individually, gives music to the unfolding story of God in our town, in our world, in our culture right now, to all the people around us. But before we can talk about the soundtrack, we have to talk about the story. And just in case you didn't know, the story we're talking about is the story of God. And so today's title is Welcome to the Story of God. Just if it's a new thought for you, here's the short version of it today. Everything is the story of God. He's before all things. He's at the end of all things. He's through all things. He's the reason for all things. He's the originator, the sustainer, the giver of all things. And all things are ultimately about him. Life is about him. Eternity is about him. History is about him. Creation is all about him. This church is about him. Life is about him. You are about him. I am about him. Heaven is about him. This book of Scripture is about him. Everything that exists is about God. Therefore, everything is the story of God. And we want to wake up to that today. We want to wake up today and realize that we are in the middle of a grand story. I think the greatest thing that can happen to a person, a human being, I know the greatest thing that ever happened to me in my life was when I woke up to realize I am in a grand story, and hello, it is not about me. It's all about him. And can I tell you the truth? I was a Christian when I woke up to that truth. Because I became a Christian when I was a little bitty boy. And I think little bitty boys can understand that Jesus Christ came and died for their sins. I believe little boys can understand that. But I think you have to sort of start entering into adulthood and into my lifehood and into my storyhood before you can fully wake up and go, oh my goodness, I've got such a small story of me, and I'm living in the middle of a massive story of you. And I'm faced with a choice. I'm at the crossroads. Do I want to keep starring in a little bitty story of me? Or do I want to surrender my life and join the great big story of God? That's the way the Scripture unfolds. If you have a Bible this morning, our first passage is going to be easy to find. You're going to love this one, especially if you're new to church or new to Scripture or new to this whole thing and you just got a Bible. You're going to love this one today because you might have come nervous like, I don't know where stuff is. This verse is the first verse in the Bible. So if you go past the table of contents and the preface, bingo, you're there. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. We get the creation story. Now, just for background's sake, this is not where the story of God begins. This is where the creation story begins. The story of God doesn't have a beginning. Now, I spent some time on that, but I can't explain it any more than that. The story of God has no beginning. Now, if you say, wait a minute, that makes my brain hurt, join the crowd. I mean, that's... And I'll tell you what else is unique about the story of God. Not only does his story not have a beginning, the story of God is the only story that doesn't conclude with the two words, say them with me, the end. His story doesn't conclude with those words. His story has no end. His story has no beginning, and his story has no end. That's one reason why we want to get into his story. Creation, maybe, we don't know where it comes. Maybe it's chapter 7,942, creation. We don't know how long God's been around. What has he been doing? What's his story been like before he decides to create everything you've seen and everything I've seen in me and you? But when he begins the creation story, this chapter begins with the words, in the beginning. You mean like in the beginning? No, in the beginning of the creation chapter of the story of God, in the beginning of our part of the story, which was already going on beforehand, in the beginning of the creation, hello, God. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, we could get into debates, we can hash it out, you can get into philosophy, but this is pretty simple right here, and you can talk and think and, philosophize all through life and never really get a good answer better than this answer. In the beginning of our creation story, God. In other words, He was there before, and He was starting this new chapter in His story called, I'm going to make a world. Here's how to make a world. Are you ready? On the first day, you separate the darkness from the light. And on the first day, that's what He did. You're saying that's all He did? Yeah, that's all He did. When you separate the darkness from the light, see how long it takes you. I mean, day one, daytime, nighttime. That was day one. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And He starts unfolding. Day two, let's separate the sky from the waters below. You're thinking, is that all He did on day two? That's it. So the next time you want to push, an atmosphere up there and then have waters below, see how long that takes. Day three, He starts to make earth, vegetation, birds of the air, fish of the sea. He makes all the created animals. He makes the starry host of the universe. He puts the galaxies in place. He puts the universes beyond our understanding in place. And now the creation story, which is, by the way, how many days long? 7 days long. Now it's late on the sixth day, and God decides to invite man into His story. Isn't that cool? You would have thought we'd been there the first day so we could show Him where to put stuff and how to make stuff and how we wanted things to be. And no, don't put that up there. Put that over there. I don't like it. I want that over there. Come on. That's not a tree. Come on. We figure we got to be around so we can explain stuff and help Him with dilemmas and problems that He has. No, it's late on the sixth day and everything's been made. And then He scoops the dust of the earth together. He leans over and He breathes into the nostrils of this form of a man. And the scripture says when He did, Adam became a living being. And he woke up. And he's looking right at the face of the creator of the universe. Imagine that wake up. And I don't know what, it doesn't say what is recorded, conversationally there, but it could have been, hi. Welcome to the story of God. Look around, and Adam's like, whoa, man. And God's like, tell me about it. What happened here? I just said trees, birds, ants, fragrance, and it all came to be, and Adam's like, and God's like, welcome to my